How to Brewster Buffalo, in War Thunder Air Realistic Battle. When a new player to War Thunder looks through the hundreds of air, ground and naval vehicles, their eyes skip the Spitfires, Messerschmitts, P-51s, MiGs, Phantoms and Zeros. Instead, the new player salivates over the possibility of flying out the Brewster Buffalo. War Thunder has new players covered. They can skip grinding through the Grumman F3F and immediately buy John Thach's F2A Buffalo. The new player's thirst to fly the Buffalo is satiated, and the player is now a new and firm convert to the game. All because of the Brewster Buffalo. What a plane! Pilots who flew the Buffalo spoke of it in glowing terms. Timara of 488 Squadron Royal New Zealand Air Force said, "As an aircraft to fly, it was beautiful." The CEO of the same squadron commented, "It was a very pleasant aeroplane to fly." Pilots came up with affectionate nicknames for the Buffalo. The US Navy called them Peanut Specials. The Australians called it the Flying Beer Barrel. The Finnish called them everything from Sky Pearl to Flying Beer Bottle, and the New Zealanders called them Bullocks because of the Buffalo name, and not because it sounds like bollocks. When the Buffalo was introduced, the US Navy enjoyed the performance it gave over their Grumman F3F biplanes. While the Buffalo could not outturn the F3F, and had the same climb rate, it was a massive 30 miles per hour faster in level flight. During the Winter War, the Finnish pilots were able to outspeed the Polikarpov I-153 Czech as they faced, and could confidently outmaneuver and outclimb the Polikarpov I-16. In Malaya, the British, Australian and New Zealand squadrons used their superior speed in a dive to counter the flimsy old Zero and Ki-43 Hayabusa of the Japanese Navy and Air Force. The only reason the Buffalo did not gain air supremacy in Malaya, Singapore, and the Dutch East Indies was due to the Buffaloes being outnumbered. The Dutch pilot, Pieter Tijdman, said, "We had too few of them."
There are 4 lights, Joanna. You are pulling a Trevor Chapel on us.
With war looming in Europe, the Belgians, Finns, and Dutch put orders in for the Buffalo.
Finland said to the US aviation manufacturers, "We will take anything, as long as it runs on 87-octane fuel, and we can have it right Kikale now." The Buffalo fit those 2 requirements.
The Finnish built an enviable record with the Buffaloes, fighting against the Soviets in the Continuation War between 1941 and 1944. The Finnish army launched an offensive at Karelia to win back territory lost during the Winter War. Finnish pilots in their BWs found they could not turn inside the Chika biplane, but they could outclimb and outmaneuver the I-16. In 1943, the Finnish Brewsters faced lags, MiGs, and hurricanes, but were still able to maintain an insanely positive claim-loss ratio.
Why did the Finnish Air Force have a good experience with the Buffalo, while the US Navy, US Marine Corps, British, Australian, and New Zealand squadrons get blasted out of the sky by the Japanese? The first answer is tempo. The Continuation War was fought over a 3-year period, with the front line static for nearly the entire time. The Finnish squadrons did not have to worry about their airfields being overrun by the Soviets. This gave them a stable environment to develop the Buffalo into a reliable airplane, and for the pilots to gain plenty of experience flying the BWs. In comparison, when Japan invaded Malaya, 21 squadrons' airfield was overrun on the first day, reducing them to 4 aircraft. By the end of the second day they had 2 flyable aircraft, and by the third day, no longer existed as a flying squadron. This is not a stable environment for air crews to get familiar with the Buffalo in combat, or the ground crews to fix all the serviceability issues that come with a first-generation monoplane. 69 days after the invasion of Malaya, Singapore surrendered. By the 10th of March, just 122 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan had taken Malaya, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, Northern New Guinea, and were pushing down the Solomons. In the space of 3 months, Japan had projected power 3,865 miles east of Tokyo when bombing Pearl Harbor, and 3,378 miles south when bombing Darwin in Australia, and had taken everything Britain, the Dutch, the United States, and Australia owned in a circumference between those 2 points. In comparison, the Finnish advance into Russia was approximately 130 miles at its greatest after 180 days of battle, with the front lines not moving much for the next 2 years. The second answer is opposition. The Finnish Air Force was flying a first-generation monoplane against biplanes and other first-generation monoplanes. The Buffaloes were facing I-15 biplanes, the I-16, the Lag-3 and the Hurricane. When second-generation fighters started appearing, like the La-5 and Yak-1B, the Finns wisely swapped their Buffaloes for Bf-109Gs. The British, Commonwealth, Dutch and US Marine Corps squadrons in Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, Burma and at Midway, were facing second-generation monoplane fighters in the A6M0 and Ki-43 Hayabusa. To add to the woes of the Allied Buffalo pilots, the Japanese were combat veterans from China, and the Japanese naval pilots were the best in the world at the end of 1941, with the best naval fighter of the period. US Marine Corps Buffalo pilots faced Kido Butai at the Battle of Midway, the Dutch faced Saburo Saki's Tainan Kokutai, while the British and Commonwealth squadrons faced Tateo Kato's 64th Centaur. The British and Commonwealth squadrons were crewed with new graduates from the Empire Air Training Scheme in Australia. The squadron leaders were often Battle of Britain veterans, but most of the crews finalised their training on Wirraways in Malaya, before having to perform point-to-point interceptions against Japanese fighter and bomber formations. The third answer is British leadership in the Far East. It was poor from HQ to the squadron level. Harper was posted as CO to 453 Squadron, a AAF. He did not like colonials, and in particular Australians. He also wanted all the sergeant pilots replaced with more experienced ones. He was shocked to discover the Australian pilots were not impressed with his leadership. The poor leadership was endemic. Air Marshal Stevenson in Burma stated that any pilot seen diving away from the enemy would face a court-martial for lack of moral fibre. 67 Squadron RAF shared an airfield with the American Volunteer Group, who were achieving success with Chennault's boom and zoom tactics. The contrast could not be stronger.
How should you fly the Buffalo in War Thunder Air Realistic Battle? The Buffalo is at its best when facing slow and defenseless bombers. If you must go after fighters, look for the newbies in biplanes. This is the closest the Buffalo will get to a fair fight. The Buffalo is at 2.3 and 2.7 BR, so you will face 109s, Spitfires and Yaks. You will not be able to outclimb them, outturn them, or overwhelm them with firepower. Fortunately, the max repair cost for the Buffalo is 1,155 Silver Lions, so you can crash on takeoff and still make a profit. The best strategy is to follow the tactics of the Finnish pilots and the New Zealand ace, Jeff Fiskin. Get above your opponents, dive on them, bang away with a burst and then extend back to height.